What we found over 20 years is that our job is to create the space for brilliant people to do brilliant work. There's this deep empathy that teams help each other achieve more. This just truly understanding that work is collaborative and we can't work on our own, and we care deeply about each other's fulfillment. Talk about a large mistake. We built Conveyor. We started working on Conveyor 5 years before we shut it down. And so it's not the money that's the mistake. The mistake was not following my own true principles and pretending like this one was different. I'm Natalie Nagele, co-founder and CEO of Wildbit.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Natalie Nagele created a product business that has supported human beings for 20 years. All this and more on Code Story. Natalie Nagele came to the States in 1989 as a Jewish refugee from Russia. She watched her parents go from nothing and utilizing furniture from the trash to building big businesses and supporting their family. She met Chris, her husband, when she was 18, and they have been working together ever since, as he is the co-founder of their business. They have 2 kids together and love to travel, specifically to the Caribbean, since it's a quick flight from Philly, and of course it's warm. Despite that, though, she would love to live in Italy one day. Their company started off as a remote consulting company, but launched their first product in 2003, and they were immediately hooked. In 2009, they stopped doing client work and focused solely on products, and haven't looked back for 20 years. This is the creation story of Wildbit.
So Wildbit started off as a consulting company. So, those first couple of years, Chris was on his own. We've always been remote. So the first person Chris ever hired was in Romania in 2000. So you have to imagine remote didn't have a name yet back then, but started as a consulting company. Early days was brochure stuff. By the time Chris and I were together and working together, we were building social networks for other companies, and then kind of launched our first product in 2003. It was an email marketing product, and then just got bit by the product bug. And eventually around 2009, I think we stopped doing all client work and just doubled down on product. So we have had a bunch of products. Right now we have 4. We have had a few that we sold, shut down, things like that. But Postmark is our largest product. And that was born out of a personal need. I think of a lot of patterns that we found in how we build software is a lot of times we're dog fooding or building things that make our lives easier. So at the time when we built Postmark, which is almost 11 years old, in April it'll be 11, we have a product called Beanstalk that was sending a lot of transactional email. So that's your kind of sign up emails, your comment notifications, any emails like the app actually sends. Back then, 11 years ago, those emails, we would manage the mail servers, and we would have no visible dashboards or UI to see about, if those emails were getting through, if our customers were getting them. Support would come in, and back then I also did support. We were a much smaller team, and support would come in, and it would be like, hey, I invited my client to use Beanstalk, and they never got the email. What's up? What's going on? And we had no visibility. So Chris had this idea, let's build a product that sends those emails. We had the experience in sending emails and managing email infrastructure from our very first product, Newsberry, but build a UI over it. So I think our first tagline, 11 or 12 years ago when we did the MVP, was because you're blind, because there were no ESPs like that, no API-based email service providers that would give you visibility into what your applications were sending. You had email marketing stuff, right? MailChimp and campaign monitors. So our first MVP took 3 months. And we have that as a consistent theme. It's really funny. We were just talking about this internally. We're thinking about another product, and we were talking about this internally, how everything we've ever built, the first MVP took 3 months. It was never a goal. It's just kind of how it turned out. I think we really like to go scrappy in that first time around. Everything but Conveyor, but we don't have to talk about that. We had a product that we built for 2 years and then threw out, or for 5 years and then kind of never launched it. But for the most part, all of our successful products took 3 months to build. And the MVP was, can we build a UI on top of an API that sends transactional emails for apps would people find it useful? Would they use it? And so built like a really simple product that did all the core functionalities, and it took off really quickly.
So you're doing, early days, you're doing some consulting, and then you build some products and you put away the consulting hat. What made you continue to be more of a product shop instead of centering your company around that one product?
There's a lot of deep introspection I think we've done to, understand that better. It's always been a question because for a long time, the best practice, or the sage advice was double down on one, right? Put all of your eggs in one basket. Chris and I think for a couple reasons, never liked that approach. The main one is because we get bored. We have ideas, right? And because Wildbit doesn't exist simply to make money, it exists for a lot of other reasons, fulfillment being one of them, an important part of it. We just always had ideas and we're always curious to explore what else can we build. And that same thing goes to our team, right? Like we are very grateful and humbled by how long folks stay with Wildbit. We have somebody who just celebrated their 16th anniversary with Wildbit, 14 years with Wildbit. So people stay. A lot of that team, I think we have over half the team is here for more than 4 years. A lot of why that occurs at Wildbit is not magic. It's because we have multiple products which allow individuals to almost reinvent themselves or change jobs within an organization. And so I think at the core of it, one of our operating principles as a company is this belief that a business is not a product. A company is a collection of human beings and the products enable the work of those people. And so it's just allowed us to really look at products as a way of providing value in the world, value to ourselves and value to our customers. Currently this year, we're working on a kind of a more operating framework around the different phases of products' lives, how we start an idea, how we test it, how we, validate it and that kind of thing. But it's just the core of who we are. We really enjoy it. And this was not intentional, but now seems really obvious. Having multiple products has allowed us to be who we are and allowed us to be around for 20 years. Markets change pretty dramatically, and Beanstalk was this product. It is a version control product at its core. It started as Subversion and moved into Git hosting, and that market dramatically changed in front of our eyes. And really our options were to grow really big and go compete against the 800-pound gorillas, or try to compete on some other ways. And because we also had Postmark in the works, we were able to kind of say, we don't want to go that route. We can invest our effort and energy into Postmark. And so it's really given us a lot of cushion around market conditions and more flexibility even in our operating structure to be able to say, hey, if this product doesn't work out, if something changes in the market, we still have opportunities in other places.
It's interesting. I'm thinking back. I used Beanstalk before, and I didn't remember. I was thinking about the first time I actually started to use as kind of a code manager, things like that. I was introduced to Beanstalk in one of the early projects I was doing, and really enjoyed it. So it's a great product.
It's really cool. And that's one of those. We were really young when that launched, and it was a different world back then. I think as business people, we didn't consider ourselves business people. We really just were building stuff that was fun. But you're right, like Beanstalk in the early days, when Chris had the idea for it, we went out to all of our friends and we were like, hey, would you, go to a hosted solution? Because this is 2007, there were no hosted solutions, right? And people looked at us like, are you crazy? I'm not giving you my source code. That's insane. And now who on earth would not, just host it somewhere? But it's an interesting, there's a lot of learnings that we've had from there, because it was one of the first. We had some of the biggest brands in the world using it, and, it became not GitHub, not Bitbucket. And so there's a lot of learnings that Chris and I have taken from that experience, and just realizing who we are as people and what we took for granted back then, and try to not have that happen to us again.
Well, tell me about some of the MVPs, and I'll let you choose which one, you talk about, but tell me about some of those MVPs. What decisions and trade-offs did you have to make in the short term while building those, and what sort of tools did you use to bring them to life?
We're really big on being scrappy. It's almost like a sick kind of obsession with how little can we make it. We built custom software, unfortunately, most of the time. And when we built Postmark, like we didn't even have a Stripe, right? All our billing was always custom. So things are much easier now when we throw something together. But all custom software. But what we do is we get rid of the things that aren't necessary. So people laugh, but like we didn't have an ability to cancel in the app. No user permissions, no two-factor. I mean, back then, now I wouldn't launch an app without two-factor, but like no two-factor, right? Like the simplest of login. Billing was really simple. Like I think our invoices were really basic. We look at it from what are we promising our user and what's going to obviously delight them, right? What's going to be enough for them to take it and switch to it. We didn't have cancel, I think, honestly, Noah, for maybe a year. And it was like not an issue, right? Most people weren't canceling. It wasn't a month. One of the reasons we were able to get away with it was because it wasn't a recurring revenue product in the beginning. It was a kind of transaction-based product. So you weren't going to get billed unless you used it. So, you could kind of keep an account and just email the team. We still take that to heart. We launched a product called DMARC Digest recently and obviously took advantage of a lot of what exists now. We could use Stripe and do all our billing through there. And now we're able to reuse some of our own stuff, like we try to create consistency across multiple products. But in the same vein, there was a lot of features that we just didn't, like user permissions as an example. We don't spend a lot of time in there. User permissions is one of those things we go through later down the line. Nobody's not going to sign up unless you have like a big team-based product. But our view is like nobody's going to not sign up because they need to invite 40 different users and different levels of permissions. What they want to know is, does this thing work? So that was another example where we did have cancellation because it was a monthly plan, but we didn't have like proration, for example, or like little things like that. Just kind of made it as simple as possible.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted vCISOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. That makes sense. Get the product out there, delight them with the product, and then as it takes off or as people are interested, maybe add some of those things in later.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative is Conveyor, which we worked on for 5 years as an MVP, spent $3 million and then just turned it off. Yeah, I prefer not to work that way, right? That was a bad call for a variety of reasons. With every other product, we really like that 3-month mark. Like, what can you build in a quarter, right? How fast can you get to value at a quarter?
So on the payment stuff, you mentioned kind of rolling your own in the beginning, and then as later products you built, you use Stripe or use frameworks that were available. Did you have any competitive advantages with rolling your own, like a better fee structure or more control? Obviously, speed of deployment comes into play whenever you're using Stripe or something, but did you have anything that was better by rolling your own?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a couple things. I have a little bit of a control issue, especially when it comes to customer data. And so we really want to be we're really privacy focused, and to really try to make sure that we're not sending our customer data all over the place. So I like to own our own as much as we can. But I think in the early days of Postmark, we had the only product that charged by usage and not a monthly recurring price, which is really hard to even roll out in Stripe. I mean, we use Stripe for all of our products now, and they worked with us, and we were able to build some custom stuff. But like in the early days, we were $1.50 per 1,000 emails sent, which the only competition we had back then, they had minimum monthly plans. We have that now because of just kind of restructuring things. But in the early days, it really helped us grow our customer base as having just an alternative structure and a more simplified structure. To answer your question, that was like a competitive advantage for us, but we didn't do that with DMARC, for example. Like we definitely launched DMARC Digest using Stripe right away. Things are just more complicated. Now we have sales tax as an example. I didn't have sales tax requirements 11 years ago. If you would have told me I have to build sales tax from scratch, I would be like, forget, I'm not building a product anymore. Like that stuff is just so complicated.
So, in the product portfolio, how do you go about progressing a product? So you build that, first MVP, you get it out there, you get some traction, and you mentioned, then adding maybe like, inviting users or certain billing features or things after the fact. But how do you go about that product progression process? And I'm kind of most interested in, how do you build your roadmap? How do you determine what's the next most important thing to build?
I will tell you that it's a constantly evolving answer. I'll give you our current answer to it, but I can't say that that's how it's always worked. Right now, we're very focused as a company in answering that question a little bit in a more organized fashion, a more operational fashion. I mean, a lot of gut will always go into our decision making because I believe the simplest things are always the better things. So sometimes you just know and you don't need to measure it or test it or, do all that stuff. But we look at products at different phases of their life. So we've kind of got like a phase 1 through 5. And, phase 1 is that idea phase, and phase 5 is maybe the product's done and it's just kind of living its life. And then you have all these phases in between. So there's a lot of validation that happens in the middle phases of understanding what is our value proposition, and then how do we keep nailing it until our customers are saying it back to us, right? They get it and we solved it. And then it's kind of, we move into this like delight phase. So the next thing to build heavily depends on which phase a product is in. We have very small teams that work on products. Like, we try to keep them very, very small so they can be autonomous and so they can work closely together. So our customer success team is constantly in connection with our product team to make sure that there's a single conversation going between the customer and the end user and the person building the thing. And we look at a spectrum of, is this going to improve the product? Is this going to maintain the product? This is going to delight the user, right? And there's a spectrum. So it depends on the life cycle. I can say, for example, with Postmark, we spent 2+ years on 2 very big projects. Not something I normally do, but it was to completely change the structure of the product, right? The product was in phase 3. We needed to deliver on the value proposition of, we can send all of your emails. We were only transactional for a long time, and we wanted to build it so we can send all your emails. That was a very clearly defined roadmap because it was such a big undertaking. Now we're in a phase where, like, we need to delight our users. What are the pain points for them? What hurts? We like to do this thing where we send out a survey to customers and say, what annoys you? Not what features do you want, not like what's the thing that what else can I do for you, but like, what annoys you when you use the product? And then we'll take like an entire quarter, and just like crush all of those little annoyances. So I think it's not like the simplest of answers, because I don't think there is like one singular answer. It just depends on this really tight collaboration between our customers and what they need, and our product team and their understanding of where is this product right now? Are we growing it? Are we trying to figure out what our value prop is and trying to reach it, or are we still validating that this is even a thing? So there's just a lot of interaction and collaboration in that, amongst those teams and with the customers. One of the things we're extremely proud of as a company is we have a non-linear correlation between our customers growing and our support team growing, because we build really solid products. We prioritize, the product working on its own without needing support. And then we have this amazing customer support team that's just phenomenal, but it's non-linear, which I'm really proud of, right? Because you want to kind of have that economies of scale. Part of making sure that they grow non-linearly is making sure we carve out time to make their lives better. So like little internal tools, small product improvements, right? You always have the thing that annoys the CS team because it's the same answer over and over again. And if we just had a better explanation in the app, right? Or if we just made this button, work fast. And what we do is that the CS team, to answer your question, what we work on, the CS team every month does a summary for the entire team, for the entire company, of number of tickets and by theme or by issue. They know that their job is to advocate for the customer. Like, that's their number one priority. So they will come in and be very direct with what they think needs to change. And so we will frequently squeeze in little things like that. Like if they come in, they're like, look, we had, 300 support tickets and it just keeps going up for this one thing. Like we had an issue with like a DNS update where customers would create an account and they would be sitting around and waiting for this DNS to update so that they could use Postmark. And sometimes it wouldn't work. And it would generate like a ton of support, because how long are you going to sit there and wait, right? You're going to think it's broken. You're going to email support. It's obviously ruining the customer experience, but it's also really creating a lot of load on the CS team. And that's the kind of stuff that they surface it to the team on a regular basis. And the team reads it. And sometimes they'll be like, hey, I can grab this. I have an extra couple days, or I'll do this in a couple hours. And they'll grab a small thing and they'll change it. Or sometimes we'll do like we did last quarter, where we said, all right, what are the top of that list and how can we crush it? Like, how can we just get rid of it?
This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com.
Well, let's switch to team. So how do you go about building your team, and across products really, but across team culture, company culture? I know you have a very specific and unique view on company culture and how you go about it with people-based. How do you go about building that team, and what do you look for in those people to indicate that they are the winning horses to join you?
It's funny when you say winning horse, I'm like, oh, they're not horses, they're people. It really comes down to people. I think the thing that makes Wildbit a little unique, two things that make Wildbit unique. One is the fact that neither Chris nor I are software developers. So Chris coded very early in his career when he was 19, realized very quickly it wasn't for him. So we've never been in the position where like, I can do this. So from day one or day two, call it, we always prioritized the experience that every employee has at Wildbit. It was always the most important thing. So for us, culture is about understanding who we are as a company and where we want to go, and then finding folks who feel really passionately about going there with us. And, we're a small but mighty software company with multiple products, right? So we're a team that can't be filled with people who are possessive over their work, for example, or who aren't interested in changing direction or changing what they work on. One of the ways in which we find the right people is we're looking for individuals who understand that a peaceful, fulfilling work requires work, right? So it's a mutual agreement. One of our core operating principles is that fulfilling work will push you but not break you, and so it's this idea that people come here curious and passionate about their craft and appreciating the fact that work is not the most important thing in the world. So we have values and principles. We actually just updated a set of principles, that rules by which we live, and then values by which we work, our behaviors. And we use them very much as a framework for how we identify individuals who we think will really thrive here and be really successful here.
It's interesting too, it is about people, but I hear you saying too, it's about people that are coming in that are not going to be possessive of their work. They need to be able to work autonomous. In that mixed, it seems like they're probably hungry, they're excited, given the right fulfilling opportunity that you were mentioning, they'll come and, turn somersaults for you.
What we found over, 20 years is that our job is to create the space for brilliant people to do brilliant work. I don't think they do somersaults for us as much as they do it for each other. There's this deep empathy that teams help each other achieve more. This just truly understanding that work is collaborative and we can't work on our own, and we care deeply about each other's fulfillment in their job. If you kind of look at like our principles, right? Like these 5 rules, these things that we believe will never change, no matter how long a company's been in business, no matter how big we get. We have these core essential beliefs that we all have to share. And they are this empathy for each other. They're this idea that work is a commitment. There's a compact almost between the company and the employee. I, as your company, promise to create a space where you can have deep work, meaningful work, where work does not become the center of your world, it becomes an integration into your world. And then you as employee make a compact to us that says, I'm going to, for us, it's stay calm and keep perspective. I'm going to be guided by purpose. I'm going to celebrate opportunities to learn. I'm not going to fight against taking risks, calculated risks, but then I'm going to be team oriented while also self-motivated, right? So it's like, I look at it as a compact between each other, right? You can't expect your team to do all these things if you're not creating the space for them to do it. And I think that's where most of the time culture breaks. Employers and companies, whatever, however you want to look at it, really look at it. My gift to you is money, and your gift to me is your time and attention. And I don't think that's right. Money is just a piece of a bigger equation. And so if you can believe that people are really do want to be fulfilled in their work, you have to give them the space to do that. Then they will, respond with creating great products, right? Caring for each other, caring for their customers, caring for you as an owner, right? I mean, all of that comes as a result of creating that space.
Well, this will be interesting because, I ask about, scalability normally. And I hear you saying that your product company is scrappy. You want to have only a handful of people on each product. The products, we can talk about how you scaled some of the products if you'd like, but I'm interested in that, and also how you effectively, scale your company, as you're bringing on new ideas, new products, and things like that. So talk to me about scalability.
Scalability is like my favorite topic right now because I'm super excited to understand how you scale a company like ours. I've been spending a lot of time researching and looking into other organizations to see how it works. My perspective's changed a little bit. For a long time, I looked at private bootstrapped companies as wanting to prove the opposite of venture capital, in that it's not about maximizing your expenses and like hiring as many people as possible and growing faster than the product grows to like reach some growth milestone. And the opposite in my mind was as efficient as possible, right? Hire the least amount of people to do the most amount of work, to do the most amount of work, to see the most results, right? The biggest results. My mind has shifted a little bit in that I'm not really sure the opposite of growth at all costs is maybe slow growth or minimizing team size. I'm looking a lot at maximizing impact. So how can you scale a business like ours with maximizing impact, right? So scaling impact. And the biggest impact I think I can have as a company is hiring people, because the more people they get to work at Wildbit, I think of it as ripples. Like if you drop a pebble in water, it creates ripples. And the employees, that first ripple, but then they have their families, their communities, all the ways in which they contribute and create positive impact. So that's how you scale that. So, Postmark is an interesting example. It's our biggest product that has the most people, but we have other products and people move around. So for us, scale a lot of times is where can we be efficient, but not at a cost, right? Not for the sake of efficiency, but for the sake of other things. We think about the CS team as a good example of where Postmark is going to take up a lot of our resources, but we have other products to support. Does that mean I have to get a dedicated customer success team for each product? Or can my one customer success team find ways to support all the products so I don't have to, scale that disproportionately? And, we've been looking at that and saying, well, where can we have consistency across our products? Account level permission or account level things come as an example, right? If all our user permissions look more or less the same, if all of our billing is the same, if all of, login is the same, a CS person on our team can be a generalist, right? They can know how a lot of products work versus making them specialized in each product. So we're thinking a lot about how you scale a company for positive impact, but not just for the sake of maximizing profits. I love profits, but it can't just be the means to the end, right? There's got to be more to it than that.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all you've built, product-wise, company-wise with Wildbit, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the people. I am daily impressed with just how brilliant and caring and just wonderful they are as human beings. And, I'm proud of the fact that we've built a place where they can be those people. Lately, especially, I've been hiring folks who are coming from, your typical Silicon Valley startup world. And they share how much they're able to be more of themselves at Wildbit because they don't have to protect their work at all costs so it doesn't get stolen by somebody else, or because they're respected even though they're a woman on the engineering team, or because they are respected to move slower but with intention. I'm proud that we've created that space. I can't say that it was always intentional. I think it's just part of that is just who we are and how we view the world. But that watching really beautiful human beings do amazing things for themselves, for each other, for their communities is definitely what I'm most proud of.
It's kind of a sad state of the world that elsewhere that is not the norm, that people have to protect their work or they have to be worried about their gender or their skin color or anything. I'm glad Wildbit is creating a great home for people there.
Yeah, it's so disappointing. We launched People First Jobs because a little bit like Wildbit's not unique. There's a lot of companies out there that are really, that put people first. And that was kind of the guiding principles. Like a lot of the team was like, there's other companies like us. We got to bring us all together and we have to help people who care. We have to help them find more organizations that prioritize people, human beings, over some of this other crap that we've been convinced is the purpose of business, which is just old way of thinking.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. So tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
I've never made mistakes. I don't know what you're talking about. I tell my team, I'm always right, you guys. What are you talking about? I have made so many mistakes. I mean, if you want to talk about a large mistake, we built Conveyor. We started working on Conveyor 5 years before we shut it down. And so it's not the money that's the mistake. The mistake was not following my own true principles and pretending like this one was different. I always love that idea that the world is, I think it's Ray Dalio, right? Everything is another one of those. The mistake that Chris and I made was looking at Conveyor as this product and believing that you don't need to reach some minimal, and MVP is a loaded thing now or whatever, but you got to reach some kind of value sooner than 5 years. And you gotta look at your team and be honest that you can fail at things, and that's okay. We've never had a product fail, so I think we just were operating under this idea that it's just one more feature, just one more thing, just something. And in hindsight, that's a huge mistake. We have this ability to make a giant mistake like that at Wildbit and nobody gets fired. And that is, extremely important, to be able to take risks, to be able to make mistakes, to not be so fragile that, a mistake even of that size, I think we did the math and we spent $3 million on it, that a mistake of that size wouldn't crush us, wouldn't have anybody laid off. So the team that had been working on it for a while, and they were in a spot too, feeling bad about, why we're not contributing to Wildbit, right? We're working on this thing that hasn't made us any money, and this sucks. There's just the motivation just is really hard. And what we ended up doing was we brought the team in. They thought they were coming in to figure out what we're working on next. And we said, who's still excited? who's still here? And Chris was like, I'll go first. I'm not, and we went around the room and we found the opportunity to say, this isn't it for us, and it's okay. And nobody's going to be fired. And let's just say it's done and it's over and it's going to be okay. And it was hard for everyone, obviously, put so much work into something, but I think there was a lot of relief that, okay, it's okay to work on something and realize it's not the thing, it didn't work, and to put it on the shelf and move on to the next thing.
So what does the future look like for Wildbit, for your products, and for your team?
Future is bright. Wildbit's 20, and Chris and I have said we've got at least another 10 in us. So we're on this new 10-year strategic plan. This is year one. We've been preparing for it for 2 years, and this is year one. The goal is to really double down on impact, what impact Wildbit has on the world. And I look at impact as outside of us, right? And then to understand how a company like ours can be a collection of human beings working on cool stuff and not necessarily a software company. So really, really, really operationalizing experimentation and multi-product, and how teams organize around multiple products. What are the life cycles of these products, and how can we do more with our products and with ourselves to provide positive impact on the world? It's a big undertaking. I think one of my measures of success in the next 10 years is to have a non-software product. I think that'll be like really good proof to me that it really is just about really caring, thoughtful people, really smart people, putting them in a room together, giving them a problem to solve and watching them just magically solve it. It's not magic, right? But it looks like magic when you look from the outside. So that's kind of the goal. It's big. I think we're going to grow in size. Really looking forward to seeing how we can operate as a bigger team. I don't think we're going to be 1,000 people, but I'd like to see us maybe get to 50 or 100 and really see how we can use Wildbit as this. I think of businesses as tools. Like, how do I use Wildbit as a tool to maximize impact for human beings? That's really at the core of how I look at the business. And we've got 4 constituents. We got the shareholders, which are Chris and I. We're the only owners of the business. We've got the employees, the customers, and the community. And so I'm like, okay, how do I use Wildbit as a tool to maximize positive impact on all 4 of those? That's where it gets really fun for me and really interesting. And looking at our products as a way to enable those 4 constituents to really thrive.
That is a bright future, and that is a big goal. I wish you all the luck in the world. I really love the idea of a non-software product too. As a tech guy for 15, 16 years, I've always been drawn to creating something, in the world of atoms, not in the world of ones and zeros. And
I mean, we're not unique, right? There's so many folks, especially software folks, who are like tinkerers, right? Chris is like baking bread or making soap or, whatever, like always tinkering, racing cars, whatever he can do to just like be out there in the physical world. It's because nothing we do is tangible. It's tangible in the people, but and in our customers that we meet and we talk to, but I can't touch it. And I think we all yearn for, or a lot of us yearn for, something we can actually feel with our hands. And that can be done. I think that's the other big thing I've learned about myself is I search for products that have an end, because our work is never done, especially in web software, right? Like I'm not shipping. I almost I wish sometimes I laugh. I'm like, can't we be like in the CD business? Like, here's the version. I'm going to ship everybody a CD, ship like like downloadable software, because then it's done, right? And you're like, okay, on to the next version.
Well, Natalie, who influences the way that you work? CEO, CTO, architect, really any person. Name a person that you look up to and tell me why.
That's such a hard question, because there's so many different people that I look up to. On the personal side, Peldy from Balsamic is a friend of mine, and over the years, his name comes up to us all the time, and just a person who has perspective on why we do all of these things. Just a really clear thinker and understands the bigger picture of all of it. I've also been lately really fascinated or really interested in the work that Ben Chestnut has done at MailChimp, because it's one of those examples of a product that the company stayed private, right, but grew really big. And I'm really fascinated by that. But just this week, I read an incredible interview with Toby from Shopify on the observer effect, and I just can't get it out of my head. He's also another, just somebody followed over the years from, back when it was just like Rails conferences. But just watching his way of thinking and articulating the world really resonates with me. And then there's like my mom, right, who came to this country with nothing and figured out how to build a thing. So there's kind of a lot of inspiration out there.
I actually hear that a lot. Like, how do I pick one person? There's so many facets to people, and you can find influence in different areas of your life. So if you could go back to the beginning, the very beginning of Wildbit, or even the beginning of a product, you pick, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
Chris and I have said over the years that one of our biggest flaws is not looking at opportunity from a business standpoint, like what we could do that goes past us. We took a really long time to switch from being a stupid business from a smart business or something like that, but a business that relies really heavily on Chris and Natalie, to understanding that we can bring structure and operational excellence and not rely on us anymore. So one of the things we did really late was move from a flat org to having, leads who help individual contributors grow and who help us think through problems and, who take some of that work off of our plates. That took us a really long time to realize, and at the cost of us really starting to not like our work. So, one of the things that's really funny that I don't think people think about as much as they should, we've been doing this for 20 years. I have not woken up every morning for 20 years, like super excited to go to work, right? There are moments, many moments, and sometimes they last a long time, where owners, right, like founders, hate their job. I think at that point is when a lot of people start to sell, or start contemplating selling, or raising, whatever those things are. Chris and I, when we hit those moments, start going really deep into introspection and like, okay, what do we change? Because the business belongs to us, right? So like we can change it in whatever direction we want to make it So it serves us too, so we enjoy it. We spent way too long not realizing that and not making change. So, there were some dark moments in our history around, just hating the work or just feeling like it got too big or too complicated, and things that once we brought really great experienced people into the mix, they showed us that it doesn't have to be that way, and that they can share in some of that load, and they can help us develop the things that we really care about, and just keep opening up more and more opportunities for Chris and I to hone in on what we like, right? What is our unique ability? What are we bringing to the table? And every year we just keep cutting out the things that aren't that. Just keep honing in on it, right? Keep zeroing in on what do we bring to the table that's unique to us, and then outsource everything else. Not outsource, but find other folks, delegate everything else to other people.
I think that's a great reminder, and for maybe not reminder, but even piece of information for founders out there, for startup folks that are hitting that like dark moment, that it's normal. It's a normalization of like, yeah, you're not going to love it every day. And some days you're going to wake up and be like, man, I don't want to do this today. And you can either make some changes or you can shuffle through it. And there's brighter days on the other side.
Yeah, especially, one of the things that was really hard for us, like if you ask me like for a second mistake, I'll tell you that we didn't have marketing as a process or as a discipline at Wildbit. I hear that a lot, especially from technical founders. And then that's when they're like, okay, I got to sell, or I got to find somebody else because I don't know how to scale this thing. But there's this alternative where like you can just hire somebody really great who fits your culture and your vision of growth and let them run that piece of the business, right? Like that's where I'm really starting to understand that it doesn't all fall on my lap. I don't have to do it all. I shouldn't do it all, right? I should find people who are much smarter than me to do it. And it's such a trope, right? Everybody knows this, but somehow I can't tell you how many founders I talk to who just get stuck there. Like, it's my job. I got to do it. It's like, no, you don't. You don't like it. You're not good at it. Bring somebody on who loves this stuff, who has the experience and who can get you to where you want to go. I'll tell you honestly, like that learning feels so silly to have this late in the game, but it's been transformative for us.
Well, last question, Natalie. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who has built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to you, can't wait to show it off to the world. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road for 20 years now?
I would tell them to write down exactly what they think the future should look like for them. Like, write it down now. What do they want it to look like? In the most practical sense as possible. What do you want out of life? Because a lot of people, and I meet them all the time, wake up 10 years later and they're like, I don't even like any of this shit anymore. Like, it went in a totally different direction. It'll consume you. I think of business as the beast, and those ideas especially, like the day the business is born, it turns into this beast, and its only job is to get fatter and eat everything in its path, right? To just grow. It's what it exists for. And if we can't put our harness around it and really control it, it'll just take over. It'll take over every decision, your happiness, your direction, your everything. And then that's when you wake up 10 years later and you're like, what just happened to me? And so the thing that I wish we did, and we've been doing this for the last 10 years, I guess, but in the early days, is every year we write down, what do I want? And in the most like tangible terms, not like this hypothetical. I love the hypothetical. I want to be a billionaire. What are you going to do with $1 billion? Write it down. You want results, you need to write them down, like tangible results. And then you start making better decisions, because you were sitting on this amazing opportunity, let's say. And what are the options? You can go take it, take it to a venture capital firm to like really scale it quick. You can grow small and learn. You can, and then the spectrum in the middle. But you can't decide on that answer if you don't know what you want. The business will tell you what it wants, right? Maybe you're sitting on like the coolest idea in the world, right? And you're like, well, the only way to bring it to the world is through huge fundraising round. And maybe that's true. Make sure you write down like what you want in that process. Are you okay losing control, right? Are you okay getting on this rocket ship and riding it out for 3 years, right? Like putting a lot of things on hold to do that. If you don't enjoy the journey, it's not worth it. I know that sounds so ridiculous, so obvious, but like it's true. The end results are going to be much better if you've really been honest with yourself on what you want to do with it.
That's excellent advice. Well, Natalie, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Wildbit.
Thank you. No, this was really great. I appreciate being on here.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month.
And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.